If you're parenting an autistic child and you've had that moment whether your kid repeats something about bodies or sex at school, at the shops, or very loudly in public, then this video is for you. If your child isn't autistic but's neurodivergent, very literal, very honest, or very confident words, this still applies. I want to say this clearly right from the start. If your child has repeated a sex ed conversation in public, you didn't mess up. This is not a parenting failure, and it's also not a behaviour problem either. I've worked in sexual health for over 30 years. I'm autistic and an ADHD myself, and I've raised neurodivergent kids. And I support families like yours every day. Panic shows up most often in families who are actually doing a lot that's right. So today I'm going to explain why this happens, what it really means, and what actually helps without shutting kids down and without also creating shame. This comes down to how some brains process information. Many neurodivergent kids, especially autistic kids, learn through literal language, clear rules, and also repetition. So saying something out loud is often part of how new information sticks. They're not thinking, is this socially appropriate? They're thinking, I learned a true thing and true things get shared. There's often no automatic sense that some information's private unless someone explains that rule clearly. And invisible rules, they don't work well for literal thinkers. So when a child repeats sex ed information, it usually means they understood it, they remembered it, and they're still processing it. They don't mean to be rude, they're not being inappropriate or attention seeking or over sexualized either. So look, here's the core thing that we're really teaching. Parents talk to their own kids about certain topics. That includes bodies, sex, reproduction, medical things, and family information, even when the information's factual, and even when it isn't shameful. And even if it's just something that happens. The rule is not that this is bad to talk about. The rule is that parents like to talk to their own kids about this, and that's the boundary. So some families will use examples like Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy, or surprise birthday presents, and these can help if they fit your family. So underneath those examples, there's one simple rule. You don't pass information about bodies, sex, or family stuff to other people's kids. So this is about who teaches whose kids. It's not about silence and it's not about shame. So if you've had a conversation with them and you explained how babies are made or what sex is, you give them that information and then you go, now look, this is a family conversation. So I don't want you going to school and telling all the kids at school about how babies are made, because parents like to tell their own kids about how babies are made. So exactly like the Santa Claus, if they've discovered that Santa Claus isn't real, we say to them, you know that Santa Claus isn't real, but there's lots of kids out there that still believe that Santa is real. So it's their parents' job to tell them the truth, not your job. So that's just an example. Now, before I go, I want to give you a quick heads up. I'm going to share a brief personal story that mentions miscarriage. And if that's not something you want to listen to right now, you might want to just skip ahead a little. I'll come back straight to the teaching after I share this story. When I was about 11, my mum was in hospital after a miscarriage. My dad told me, the rest of the kids, very plainly, mum's had a miscarriage. That was all the information was given. I didn't know what a miscarriage was. I didn't know that it was private. I didn't know adults treated it as something sensitive. So the next day at school, living in a small country town, we were new to town as well, which probably wasn't helpful, went to school and a teacher asked me why my mum was in hospital. So I answered her honestly. When mum got out of hospital a week or so later, I got into a lot of trouble. I got told off for gossiping and sharing confidential information. I got told off for sharing something that I shouldn't have. I didn't know that it was private. I didn't know that I shouldn't have said anything. And from my perspective, I was asked a question from an adult taught to be respectful to adults. They asked me a question, so I answered it. So to me, it was just a fact. Mum had a miscarriage. I didn't know what a miscarriage was. But my mother's reaction to that and that experience, it stayed with me for a long time. I share that story because this is exactly what happens with many neurodivergent kids. They don't automatically know which facts are inside facts or which topics adults quietly treat as private or why some true things suddenly become off limits either. So, from an autistic point of view, the question's often, why is this a problem? It's just something that happens. And that question, it isn't wrong. It just means that the social rule wasn't explained. And when a neurodivergent kid repeats information about bodies, sex, or family stuff, it's not carelessness. They're just missing that context, and that context is something that adults can definitely teach. So when this happens, try not to shame or to snap. Try not to panic or overreact. And try to avoid taking that information away once it's been given. So don't see this as a sign to stop talking about this topic. The anatomy words. Those reactions, they don't teach privacy, they actually teach fear and confusion. Now, this works best before there's a problem. You might say something like, some information is stuff that's just for our family. Parents like to talk to their own kids about bodies and sex. Or we talk about penises and vulvas at home with trusted adults. We don't talk about it in public. And school and playground have got different rules as well. And this gives your child clear categories, predictable boundaries, and no shame. So what you're giving them is a map and not a warning. Many neurodivergent kids do better with direct explanations. So you might say, if you talk about sex or genitals at school, adults might think that you're being rude or silly. They might not know that we talk about this at home. You won't be in trouble with me, but it could feel a bit tricky. So this isn't like a threat. It's actual context. It's cause and effect. So it's letting kids know that if you do this at this place, this might happen. And look, if it does happen, what matters most is what comes next. You want your child to know that if anyone tells you off or you get in trouble, come and tell me. My job's to help explain things, not get you in trouble. And we'll work out what to do differently next time. This actually helps to protect disclosure as well. And kids disclosing when these things happen is more important than perfect behaviour. Later, when everyone's calm, you can then ask, what did you say? Who was there? What reaction happened? Where might be a better place or person to talk to about this next time? And then we also might talk about what the boundaries are so that, when we talk about where babies come from, that's really a conversation that we have at home as a family. So giving kids that clarity, it actually replaces guesswork. So for younger kids, being literal, loud, and repetitive is expected. Early primary school kids, they're just starting to understand public and private. So visual rules can sometimes help. And look, repetition from us is still normal as well. And none of this means that you've done anything wrong. And by repetition, I mean by us repeating information, facts, and boundaries. Kids don't overshare because of sex ed. They overshare because they're kids. And look, clarity doesn't cause problems, but when missing context, not all the information is there, that's what causes problems. So this isn't about secrets. It's actually about social safety, because you're not just teaching them about sex. You're teaching them how to hold information as well, how to keep things private. If this has happened in your family, take a breath. You didn't mess this up. It's a skills gap and it's not a behaviour problem. And you don't have to work this out alone as well. Everything that I do through Sex Ed Rescue is built around neuro-affirming trait-first sex education. And it works with how kids actually process information and not how we expect them to. If you want to keep going, The video linked here is last week's video, and it was about surprising ways to prepare kids for relationships. And it connects directly to this video because handling information and boundaries is a part of relationship safety. And if this video helped, you're already doing the most important thing. You're paying attention and you're not panicking. And you're actually teaching sex ed and social learning at the same time. And that's how safety grows.